So I've been a teacher in traditional public school, charter school, and a private boarding school in New York, San Francisco, and in India. And I did say high school, and the thing is, I actually love adolescence as a stage of life. Now already you're going to judge me, and that's okay. But to me, it's a time of immense curiosity, self-expression, and a time when students are really forming their identities. Now, I do have daughters, and so people have told me that, well, you might feel differently once they become teenagers, but go with it for now. And I said, okay, I will. So I really love the stage of adolescence. And one thing I've learned as a teacher about adolescence is they're constantly searching for relevance, and they're searching for meaning. And one of the ways they do this is ask the question, why do I need to learn this? And of course, when I've been asked this question, I was thinking, and this has happened several times, is what can be more interesting than learning about the similarities and differences of a plant cell and an animal cell? I mean, that's just inherently. Or learning about how to solve systems of equations, both algebraically and graphically. I mean, how cool is that? And so they had the same reaction as you did, like, that isn't interesting. And that's okay. What I came to realize, though, is that the students that asked the questions weren't the only ones that felt that way. A recent Gallup poll showed that about 53% of students are engaged in schools, and the other 47% is a mix between not very much to actively disengaged. And so what do we do with that 50% that's not engaged, right? So as a teacher, what did I really try to do? So I did try to make real-world connections, right? I tried to say how this is going to be useful in college or in different jobs. This is how it's going to be relevant. But at the same time, I found that how relevant is college and work, when you're a teenager? And so let's look at college. What we find with college, and students see this more and more, is that of the students that go to college, about half end up dropping out. If you're a poor or if you're a minority, it's far more severe. Of those that do graduate, they're often unemployed, underemployed, and oftentimes have a lot of debt. And so that's college. What about work? So in the world of work, adolescents know people who work, and they find that even among those who are working, surveys show about 50% are actually engaged and happy with their jobs. And so when we make the connections between job and college, that future isn't as shiny and bright, I think, as we once thought it was. What I like to propose here is that we need to re-engage on a dialogue about purpose. I left teaching to explore interests that I had in leadership of organizations. And then I decided to explore this not by going to traditional education schools, but by exploring this in business schools. And so I enrolled in an M.B.A. program and studied organizational behavior and public nonprofit management. What I found was astounding. I found both students and businesses that were interested in something beyond the bottom line of profits. There was this new terminology, which many of you are probably now familiar with, about having a double bottom line or a triple bottom line. That is, businesses were interested in not only profits, which are necessary, but also in reducing their environmental impact on the world, as well as having a positive social impact. And so there are companies, Adobe Systems, seeks to reduce their carbon impact to zero by the year 2015, which is this year. So I haven't checked on how that's going. But that's one of their goals. There's a lot of new businesses, entrepreneurs starting companies with this double and triple bottom line in mind. What these companies have also found is that by pursuing a higher purpose, multiple purposes of business, is that employees are also engaged, in addition to consumers being more interested in buying products from these companies and them also doing well financially. Now, I often think of these businesses and think about the parallel to education. In education, I think we I think the parallel is that we often pursue student achievement as if it is the single bottom line. And we're not looking at the double bottom line that it could be. Secondly, what we find is that college, and the world of work, isn't all that we, thought it would be. When we look at the current purpose of education, lots of school mission statements will say great things about how they want to develop wonderful citizens and critical thinkers. But the reality, when you walk in many classrooms, unfortunately, is that you see classrooms where students are focused on academic learning. Likewise, when you look at the world of work, we find that even those with college degrees, are not always doing what's good in the world. We see this, obviously, the obvious news stories of those in the financial services industry and then computer hackers and identity theft. I mean, many of these are very educated people, but we're also seeing this more and more in the healthcare industry and the education industry, and where people are engaging in other unethical practices that aren't helpful for society. So how can we expand kind of on this purpose? What I'd like to propose is a twofold purpose for education. And we can have debates on this. I'm just here to start the conversation, so don't get angry. But I think one of these purposes can be for engaging students in personal transformation, and the second purpose is engaging students in social transformation. So let's take a look at personal transformation. So obviously, in education, we want to support students in lifelong learning. And oftentimes, this is great, right? We want students to have that intellectual curiosity throughout their lives, where they're reading things constantly and learning new things. And that we should support. But there are other domains, right, that we can have lifelong learning in. One of those domains, is eating better and exercising better. Like learning more about our physical bodies in schools and continuing that lifelong learning throughout. John Dewey had written that the key criterion for the value of a school education is the degree to which it inspires a desire for continued growth. Now, more recently, Carol Dweck, Stanford research professor, has called this about having a growth mindset. So I think whatever this mindset is, we can expand this to be in many domains. Another domain that we can think about this in, of course, is what Benjamin Franklin and Gandhi and Martin Luther King have taught us, is also about virtue and character. And one more domain that's especially exciting to me is about social and emotional learning. Now, I had an opportunity many years ago when I was teaching in this charter school to actually focus on social and emotional learning. What was in this school, the tradition was you have a week without walls, as it was called. That we had the traditional schooling happening, but in this 1 week, teachers proposed a course that they would teach on any topic of their choosing. Now, it had to be vetted by the administration and stuff like that, but you could pretty much choose any topic. I decided to choose the psychology of love. And I'm certainly not a love expert, as my wife will fully attest. But I feel deeply about this topic because it is a topic, right, that students are pursuing or thinking about, as I learned, high school students think about love and relationships just before school, during school, never during while I'm teaching, but in other classes, right, and as well as after school and into the evening. And so in this class, we decided to explore how the media portrays love and relationships. Of course, had to read some psychology research readings. And then we also did a mini research project, which was my favorite. And I asked students to develop survey questions that they would then ask people about. And then I unleashed them into downtown San Francisco to ask unsuspecting bystanders what their perceptions were about love and relationships, depending on their questions. Now, what they found is the subject of a whole nother talk. But I highlight this because the impact that I found that it had on students' perceptions and understandings of relationships, I felt were enhanced. Now, did this have a lifelong impact on how they see relationships? Probably not. But I feel like it's important to help adolescents and throughout school think about such an important aspect of life. And in doing so, my hope, of course, is that we can reduce a lot of the emotional drama right, that occurs in relationships both in high schools, but then also, hopefully, for some reason, sometimes it continues in adult relationships as well. And so by focusing in personal transformation, by focusing on helping students become lifelong learners, both in all three, in mind, in body, and in heart, I think this more expanded purpose is going to engage students more quickly, and then also lead them to have more productive lives as a result. In addition to personal transformation, I think an equally important consideration is social transformation. Helping students be social agents of change, helping students use their passion, their curiosity, and interests to make a difference in the world. You know, I visited a lot of schools, and one of my favorite schools is High Tech High in San Diego. This is a school that their curriculum is designed around projects that are relevant to the lives of students, and it's received international attention as a result. And one specific project that they did was how to save the San Diego Bay. What students did is they analyzed the bay, they created maps, they did pictures, they did assessments of the ecology of the bay, and created a field guide. And as a result, others started using this, nonprofit environmentalists, activists, and agencies, and other interest groups. And there's an ongoing dialogue with these students on how to protect the ecology of the bay. Right, this is just one example, right, of how to make learning relevant and engaging for students. There are teachers all over the country who are taking individual initiative to do something similar. The problem, though, as I see it, is that this activity is kind of happening on the fringes of traditional learning, right? It's not happening as the core purpose of schools. So in closing, you know, I just want to highlight that I believe that if we strive for a higher purpose in schools, one that's not narrowly focused on the personal potential financial gain from college and careers, but a broader purpose, we're engaging students in personal transformation and social transformation, we will be able to improve our society and create an ever-advancing civilization. Now, there are many people focused on the how of schooling, right? How do we get students, what's the best way to teach reading? What's the best way to support teachers? How do we best assess students? And all these are great conversations. But I fear if we don't pay attention to the broader purpose, we're really shortchanging our students. As we work to ensure, I guess in order to ensure that adults lead personally relevant and meaningful and purposeful lives, I think we need to do the same for students and ensure that their education is as purposeful as possible. Thank you.